Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me. You're listening to The Tim Laskus Show. And yes, I'm Tim Laskus, and this is episode 56. I'd like to thank one of my coolest new sponsors, Design Crowd. If you're an entrepreneur looking for a very cool, great logo, I'm not talking about mediocre or just average, no, I'm talking about a great logo, then you need to go to Design Crowd. They did my logo on my mic flag, my banner, and everything that I pretty much use for my podcast show, they did that design. They will crowdsource your design. You tell them what you want, they'll crowdsource it. They'll have people just come up with all these wild, really great creative designs, bring it back to you, and you get to pick the one that you like, and you do not have to settle. You don't pay a dime until you find a logo that comes back that meets all of your characteristics. No longer will you have people going, "Is that your logo? That thing sucks." No, you're going to get lots of compliments when you use Design Crowd. And if you go to timlaskus.com/resources, you click on the Design Crowd link right there, you'll get the discount for just clicking on that link. How cool is that? Go to timlaskus.com/resources, click on the Design Crowd link, and get your discount and get an awesome logo. No more excuses. Also, while you're on the resources page, be sure to pick up your entrepreneurial success guide. And if you want to be successful, there it is. It's free. Okay, so there's two things. If you want to be successful, I'm giving you something free. I'm a giver. We need some takers. And so you need to just take it right there. It's the same book that I have for sale on Amazon, but don't buy it. The title of it is Finding Your Costa Rica, 5 Powerful Steps to Personal, Professional, and Financial Success. And that is your guide. It's in an ebook. It's free for you. Head on over to timlaskus.com/resources. Now on to today's featured guest, who is Rocky Roamnella. That's a cool name. Roamnella. It just kind of rolls off your tongue. But anyway, he's an experienced executive, a CEO, a director, keynote speaker, trainer, advisor. He's been an executive for many different big companies, including UPS. And he has a fantastic story of how he kind of rebuilt the brand around the UPS store. But his new company, the one that he founded, is 360 Management Services. And today he talks about setting up efficient operating plans for success. So this whole show today is about being successful. And so I know you're going to enjoy it. There's great information here that's going to help you along the way. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests, entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome, listeners. Today's featured guest is Rocky Roamnella. Rocky, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Tim, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Hey, I forgot to double check with you to make sure I pronounce your name correctly.
Well, you were close. Roamnella.
Roamnella.
There you go. Just let it roll.
Let it roll. Hey, you were telling me that you and your wife are big football fans with the Giants, and you like to go tailgate and get crazy.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's funny because if you meet my wife, a great lady, and just a wonderful partner, and in fact, the book I wrote, Tighten the Lug Nuts, in many ways is a tribute to her. But when you see her, I mean, she's bubbly and all those kind of things. But boy, when she gets to a tailgate, she's like an undergrad. So it's a whole nother side of Debbie Roamnella.
So she lets her hair down, huh?
Yeah, she really does. She enjoys it. So we have 4 season tickets to the New York Football Giants, and it's a long-standing tradition. Her dad has since passed, but his dad had tickets from the 50s. So it's been a long tradition. So the kids and Debbie and I really enjoy going to the games.
Wow. Well, do you put your mean faces on when the Jets play the Giants?
No.
Or the Cowboys?
The Cowboys and Eagles, forget it. I mean, there's no no love lost there between the Eagle Cowboys and Giant fans. But no, in New York is interesting because I'm not one of those New York fans I'm a Met fan, Giant fan, and so, but I don't dislike the Yankees or dislike the Jets. I mean, I don't root for them necessarily. I certainly don't root for them when they're playing the Giants or the Mets.
Well, I'm a big Yankees fan, so I'll forget we said.
Yeah. Us Mets fans affectionately call them the Evil Empire.
Oh. Hey, well, we could have a whole show on the Evil Empire there.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself professionally? What are you currently working on, Rocky?
So professionally, 40 years of business. I started out June 15th, 1976. graduating high school, a good friend of mine got a job at UPS, and we needed to, kind of make a little bit of money. And my dad, rest his soul, said, "One of my kids is going to college. It's you, but we have no money to pay for it." So UPS afforded me the opportunity to work part time and pay my way through school. And so I went to St. John's University. I went to the Staten Island campus, which was a commuter campus, and so it gave me the opportunity to work my way through college, pay for school, and then UPS had a promotion from within policy that I took advantage of, and so worked my way up through the organization, was a delivery driver, and then rose through the ranks from a management perspective, and then retired from UPS. Took on a role as a CEO of a telecom company in Pennsylvania. We sold that to private equity, retired from there. And one of the things that's consistent here, Tim, is that I realized upon retirement, following my wife around ShopRite or a food store doesn't work too well. So I kept myself busy, and today we have a small consulting firm, 360 Management Services. We do keynote speaking, which I do the keynote speaking, management training, and excellent management training curriculum, where we really have some experienced leaders that do the training. And you get up in front of the group, and I have 40 years, the other instructor has 36, and there's two or three others that have 35, 36 years of experience. So it's really nice because you can have real life experiences to discuss with the management teams you're working with and trying to train and develop. And then we have a small consulting piece of business. So it keeps me really busy and keeps me young at heart.
Well, what are some of the? Well, actually, before we get into that, I just had a quick question that was on my mind. You talked about working your way up through UPS, and I see those UPS drivers driving around in those big brown trucks with no. Well, I guess they have doors, but they always have those doors open, right next
Yeah.
to the driver. Did you ever fall out?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
It's UPS has a world-class safety culture, and we were wearing seatbelts before it was fashionable at UPS. So we were always trained to safety first and make sure that the bulkhead door is closed and your seatbelt's on, and you're really supposed to be, I guess, for all intents and purposes, drive with the doors closed. But I guess that's the form of air conditioning for a driver.
Yeah. Well, what do you do in the wintertime? I bet you never drive with that door open when it's
No, no, no,
20
no.
degrees outside.
No, you just move a little quicker. Get the body heat going.
There you go. Well, that's great. I just had to ask that. But now, getting back to your consulting firm, though, what are some of the clients that you have as far as their issues, and how are you helping them?
Well, on the consulting side, we really do, our core competency and the things that we really like to work on is process improvement. And all of us in the group have an engineering operations background from UPS, and so we apply that whole process mentality. Coming up with, observing, coming up with the true problems are, and then putting together a process to improve that, and then working with the clients. We really like the opportunity to work with the clients on the implementation side, so that you've come up with a good plan, you've identified the true problem, you've come up with a good plan. But we love the execution piece because we grew up in that world of execution where if you've developed the problem, nobody likes the Monday morning quarterback or the Captain Obvious. Hey, it's a problem over there. Okay, that's great, but you think you can help me fix it? And that's where sometimes consulting ends. In our world, that's where it really begins with us. I mean, we like the execution piece of it, and so we work through with our clients to an execution piece. We're working with one company today on their scheduling of their crews and their pilots, and that's a fun, exciting one when following the FAA rules and then putting together an efficient scheduling process. Another company we're working with, they have distributed outsourced employees, and we're working with them on the scheduling and then the work measurement and then the operating plans, and then how do you replicate that operating plan and that consistent efficiency throughout the organization. So that whole process and management is such a big piece of our who we are as a core group of individuals.
Well, do you ever find it difficult for them to actually follow through with your plan? A lot of times people come to you, I'm sure, when they're distressed as a company, whatever's going on, and then they either want to kind of please the higher ups or the board members or whoever it might be, and then they kind of hire you, and then they really just don't follow through. Has that ever been an issue?
Well, the real issue, well, it's the issue is the consistency of it. You generally get, the early adopters to almost all the programs that you do, no matter where you go. It's that group of people in the middle that are either nervous or scared, or may not have the ability to completely execute that plan. And that's usually the group that really needs your attention and your kind of coaching and counseling and mentoring through the plan. And I think that's the group that really needs the hand holding kind of thing. And I think that's people want to be successful and they want to do the right things. It's just, the change is difficult and then the ability to communicate that change to their people sometimes is difficult for them to do. I also think, in thinking about your question, the other problem is that, people tend to have a belief that they know what the problem is. And so even though it's a kind of like when you go to the doctor and you walk in, you say to him or her, hey, my kids have a ear infection, or just give me some amoxicillin, or it's like, okay, but doctor's looking at you like, can I at least, take a look at this? Can I at least, check some statistics? Well, it's really the same thing in business. People believe they have an understanding of what their ailments are, what they need to fix. For whatever reason, they're not getting to it or don't have the ability to get it fixed. And so, part of it is you really would, as the consultant or the group there, you really want to take a step back and say, well, can I at least do a little diagnostics here? Can I ask some key questions? And you may be right on with what the problem is, but at least let me take a look at it. And that's where I think sometimes, you get that little bit of, where you're not exactly in sync with the customer because they really want you just to get started and fix it. You just want to make sure you're fixing the right thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before you jump in and just create this whole kind of new plan for them and execute
Right.
it, you want to make sure that you're right on target and have the appropriate diagnosis first.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it'd be no different than your car not starting. I mean, your car doesn't start. You don't say, I need a new engine. No, you start with, the logical approach. Well, let's check and make sure the battery's okay. And if the battery's okay, then maybe it's a starter and so on and so forth. Excuse me. You never start with, it's time for a new engine.
Correct. Absolutely. Now, since you made the transition from UPS, working for a company for all these years, and I'm sure you gained just an incredible amount of knowledge and how systems work and how a big operation really just functions as one. And when you made that step into entrepreneurship, what was that like for you? Was it difficult?
Well, I think the scary part is, and entrepreneurs, know this better than anyone else does. One of the opportunities I had inside of UPS is that we purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and then rebranded to the UPS store. That gave me the ability to work with, over 4,000 entrepreneurs, and so that really was a great education for me, and I got a chance to meet some wonderful people, and then you really get a sense of that entrepreneurial spirit that people took everything they owned in life and slid it across the table and said, hey, I want to start my own business. And so I guess that's the ultimate in being all in, right? I'm completely in when that happens. And so starting a bit, when you're with a big company and it's a well-run company, there's always that security of knowing that, the company's running well, and it's a function of, did you make as much profit as you thought? Versus, well, I didn't make as much as I thought, but I still, made a profit and I still have some free cash flow. Well, as an entrepreneur, especially in those early days, you're sitting there, you're trying to win business. And I say the entrepreneurs have the ultimate profit and loss understanding. At the end of the day, you hit the cash register and the cash register door opens and you pay your people, you pay your vendors, and what's left is what you bring home to your family. And that's the ultimate entrepreneur. That's the ultimate ownership. And I think that, until you do that, you really don't understand it in the terms the way an entrepreneur does. So that's I would say the most difficult or frightening piece is that, winning business and kind of understanding the cash flow and how do I make this meet, and when are, you as the entrepreneur, I mean, you're trying to grow that business and you're trying to add new revenue streams and new clients, and they don't always happen in, as quickly as you'd like or when you would like it potentially. And so you're managing through those kind of ups and downs. So that's, I think, the difficult part.
What would be a couple of tips that you would have for some of the watchpreneurs out there who are listening, who are sitting on the sidelines, ready to jump in? And now you've been doing this for a while. What are some tips that you would have for them?
The first tip I tell people all the time is, there's three questions you have to ask yourself. And one is, who are you? What do you stand for, and what won't you compromise? And those are going to be important because in those difficult days, for example, who are we? What do we stand for? What won't we compromise? Will help you through those difficult days. So, for example, if you start out starting a business, for example, we're a consulting business, public speaking, keynote speaking business, and a leadership training business. Well, we do a really good job, for example, on the leadership training when it comes to, frontline management, leadership skills. Well, if someone came to us and said, "Hey, look, I know your area of expertise is in leadership training, accountability, communication, those kinds of things. I'd really like you to teach I think you guys could teach a class, on accounting." Well, if we're tight on revenue, we may say, well, look, if we can teach those, why can't we teach accounting? Well, that's when you have to know who you are and what you stand for and what you won't compromise. Well, who we are is a process-driven process management company that helps improve processes. We understand accounting, but if you really wanted a pure accounting class, for example, what we should do is say to you, hey, you know what? You really need to go to a group of people that have that as an expertise. And so sometimes when you're tight on revenue, you start to push out a little bit and you start to compromise who you are. And you start that conversation of, well, it's near neighbor. I have the skill to be an educator. I have a skill to train. I do a really good job in front of a class, but I won't be able to be relevant. I won't have those examples that the class will look at me and say, well, have you ever been through that? Well, no, not really, because I was on the operations side. You probably should talk to a CFO. So I think that's one recommendation I'd give. Make sure you know who you are, what you stand for, and what you won't compromise, and what are the things that are in your core competencies. And even though it may be tight on revenue, if you start to stretch yourself too far, you just won't be as good or as successful as you'd like to be, and you could damage your reputation.
For sure, and those are great tips and strategies, to be able to think of yourself in that clarity and have that real clear direction of where you're going. Now, when you first kind of decided that you were going to be an entrepreneur, no longer kind of working for a big company, what was that like for you, and what helped you make that step?
Well, I got to the point I got to the point where I had worked for UPS. I retired, took on a role as a CEO of a telecom company. We sold that to private equity. And I looked and said, you know what, I've got some great experience. And to me, and I talk a lot about it in my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, it's all about legacy. It's what you leave behind. Is the place better because of you being there? And are your customers better because of their time with you? And so this concept of legacy is very important for me. And so the book gave me something of an opportunity to write down, I think, some life lessons and some great opportunities that I had throughout my career to kind of talk about that and maybe help someone else. And to me, that's legacy. And so I thought, well, I'm young at heart, young at spirit here, got a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I have, 5, 6, 7, 8 great partners that I work with throughout my career that have some great skills. And we all kind of got together and said, well, look, you know what? We can continue this legacy concept. We can continue to help some people out there. We can utilize our skills both in the training and teaching aspects, both in the public speaking, motivational side, and then on the consulting side. With all this experience that we have, if we can go in and help some companies and we can help some people be successful, why not? I mean, we feel good about ourselves, they feel good about themselves. It's a win-win for all of us. And so that's how we kind of put that all together and said, look, why not get out there and make some good things happen? Fill this niche and fill this role out there, especially for smaller companies. For us, we really deal with a lot of smaller companies because those are the companies that need kind of our help and our background. And if it's good for them and it's good for us.
Well, it sounds like you kind of took that team approach that you learned at UPS, working for big organizations, and kind of applied that in starting your own company, with a team of other guys. And so you understand how teams are really important and how they work together.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the power of all the individuals together, working together. I think that's really, that's the power of an organization. Everyone's on the same page. I think the key there is that, we've always lived by, and I've always lived by, we can disagree, we just can't be disagreeable. And if you can live by that concept of, hey, let's disagree, it's healthy, let's kind of figure out the best way to do it. But let's not be disagreeable. Let's not, get to the point where we take our bats and our balls and we go home and then nobody wins then.
Yeah, for sure. What was one of your kind of biggest challenges that was a surprise to you once you stepped out into your own company?
It's funny. I think entrepreneurs out there listening would kind of relate to this. Is that you sit there, for you as the entrepreneur, as the owner, you're sitting there and you can make, not that, you're ready to make decisions. Okay, let's go make this happen. But sometimes when you're dealing with other companies and it's clear as day to you, and you believe it's as clear as day to them, but making that final decision can sometimes get frustrating for you as the entrepreneur selling them a product or a service, because it seems like making that final decision is a difficult part. So I think that it's a little bit of that frustration that can sometimes happen. How do I pull this across the finish line, or how do I get it to a conclusion so that we can engage, we can get some successes and move forward? I think that's sometimes a little bit of the frustrating piece.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's move on into the dig rounds where I have three quick questions
Sure.
for you. What keeps you motivated?
The excitement of helping, working with people. I originally went to college to be a high school history teacher, so I love the teaching. I love when light bulbs go off in people's heads. So that's sort of the thing that keeps me pumped up and motivated.
Yeah. Now, who do you look up to as a business leader?
It's funny. When growing up, it was my dad, rest his soul. He just was a great influence on me. But as a business leader, I would say that I was fortunate to be mentored by some really interesting and great people. And so I probably am a combination of two or three people that I work for. There was a gentleman I worked for who since passed. Ed Chip was wonderful. Really had a great business sense, a great business savvy. I worked for another person, Bud Yard, who was the consummate professional, just a people's person before it was fashionable. I always thought that he was someone, boy, I would say, boy, if people can talk about me the way they talk about Bud, with his ability to touch people, work with them. And I would say the last person is my brother Georgie, who is just an excellent person, and he's a world-class machinist, does an excellent job. But he's such a he does his job with such um, passion, energy, and enthusiasm, but in such a low key way. He reminds me of my dad in so many ways, that he was just such a great craftsman, but would never believe it's him that's that great a craftsman. So I admire his humbleness. I admire his way he goes about doing his things, and how he's comfortable in himself. To me, that's the so I would say those three are probably my kind of combination of my biggest influences.
Well, they sound like some very special people to you,
Yeah, they really are. They were great people. I did have one individual who I had an opportunity to speak to. As my business thrill was, I during my career at UPS, I got an opportunity to meet with and spend about 4 hours with legendary coach John Wooden at UCLA, and he had retired when I spoke to him, but just a gentleman, a great man, great leader. And so many of the practices, or many of like his pyramid of success, Coach Wood and I had an opportunity to talk about, and many of those, the Woodenisms I use all the time, but real life kind of working with mentoring, I would say it's those individuals I talked about.
well, he has some real strategies for success, and I know people just love his information. Now, the third one is street smarts versus book smarts. Which is more important to you? You have
Oh,
to
I
pick
think
one.
it's street smarts. I think it's because street smarts gives you the ability to work with people, interact with people, and you're sensitive, right? You get things, right? And I think the biggest thing in business and in life is, do you get it? Do you realize what's going on around you, or do you have to kind of open a book and figure out that, hey, my business is on fire. Hold on, let me go to pay. Oh yeah, here are all the double checks I have to do. Here's all the check marks that says, yeah, business is on fire, or my relationships aren't going well. No, I think street smarts gets you there.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I thought you were going to say book smarts, but yeah, your answer was great. Was fantastic. Now, can you
I think
share
my see
quickly?
that's why I wrote my book to be like a street smart book.
Oh, gotcha. Exactly. So that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Well, since you've been an entrepreneur, what's one stressful situation mentally that you had to deal with, and how did you get over it?
Well, the biggest thing for me was, this whole concept of, growing the business, and then, how do we all participate? I think that was the stressful part. I wanted to make sure that, people felt like, it was a group of us that worked together for many years. And I wanted to make sure that, I, I was being fair. That, in other words, I wasn't making any money on my friends. And so to me, that was wanted to make sure that as we built this business, as we went about growing the business, to make sure that we were being fair with each other, being fair with our clients, and that at no point did any of them ever look at me and say, hey, I feel like Rocky's making money on us. I would never want that to be the case. So, that to me would be, early on when it was tight and we were just starting to get our name out there and we're starting to win some business. I wanted to make sure that, I was the last person that got paid. I was the last, that any money, any funds that were left over, we distributed them before I took anything, just to make sure that they understood that, we were going to do this together, and that my interest was going to be put behind everyone else.
Well, it sounds like you had a great process. And what would you say has been the most fulfilling moment of your entrepreneurial journey?
My first speech. What happened was, I had done a lot of speaking while I was at UPS, and had done it before many times, so that wasn't the big issue. But now was the first time you're kind of in front of a group, and these aren't people that knew you, or you were doing it on behalf of a company. And so that first time getting out there and making sure, and then watching people smile and nod their heads and, kind of laugh at the jokes. And I was like, okay, I can do this. You know what I mean? Because, it was a different setting and it was a different environment. So that was really fulfilling for me, because it was like, wow, okay, I always believed I could, but, can I get out there and really motivate these people? Because you always wonder, the groups before, especially inside an organization, whether I was at UPS or in my CEO role, the party always say, well, they got to smile and they got to laugh, right? They feel like they're supposed to, but do I get this group of people to react the same way? So that was a nice feeling.
So it sounds like it's kind of a new journey for you, a new experience, and you were able to kind of just really crush it. And you're like, yeah, that really builds up your self-confidence and esteem to go forward doing that.
Yeah, it was one of, yeah, it just is like you said, like I said, it was just like you get up there and, I'm always nervous before I speak, to be frank with you, because that's not one of my, I view as one of my core strengths. It's something I knew I had to always work on. It's just worked out that way, that it's something I've learned to do well. But you're always a little nervous, right? Because you want to make sure that you represent yourself and also to talk well, right? So that you're connecting with the people in the audience. So yeah, it was a great feeling, I have to say.
Yeah, well, being nervous just kind of really shows that you care. You care about your delivery, you care about the people, you care about giving value. So all that's part of it. Well, Rocky, we've come to the end of the show, but before we go, where can people find you online or on social media and all those good places?
Well, so online, our website is www.the3 and the word 60, SIXTY, managementservices.com. And you can buy the book there. You can see our services. You could request a speaker. So it's just a great website that we've built that very interactive, and I think will give you a lot of information. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, I think Instagram. And then my sister just told me we're on Pinterest now. The book's on Pinterest. So that's pretty neat, I guess. That's pretty cool. And then you can buy the book online at Amazon or Barnes and Noble. So, and one of the things that's really turned out really nice is the book in many ways is a tribute to my dad and my wife as I go through a career with some lessons and some really great stories in there. But I've got some really good feedback over the last few weeks that many people bought the book as a Mother's Day gift, and some are buying as a Father's Day gift. So regardless of that, it's just a nice feeling that people would read the book, put it down, and think of their parents or think of someone in their life who was influential in your life, and that's sort of really been a nice byproduct of the book. So I got a call from a friend of mine the other day and said, hey, I read the book. It was really, really great, and picked up the phone and called my dad. So I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, that's great. And tell the listeners the name of the book again.
Yeah, the name of the book is Tighten the Lug Nuts, and it's I think you'll like it from a story perspective. It's not only for business or leadership. It's really, I think it transcends business and really works well in your personal life as well.
For sure. Well, Rocky, you've been a great guest. I really appreciate it. And then the next time I'm in Jersey, I'm going to get us some Yankee tickets, and I'm going to take you to a Yankee baseball game. How about that?
Oh, I would be honored to do it. Tim will have a good time doing that. I'll buy you the hot dogs. How's that?
All right. That sounds good. I appreciate it.
I'll take you to a Giant game. Next time you're in town, let me know if it's football season, and we'll bring you to a tailgate.
Love it. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Rocky. You've been a fantastic guest, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskas.com.